Hi, everybody. I'm Frank Stanishi of Open Forum. It's candid, frank, and live. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now on Open Forum, Jessy Rodriguez Melendez, sports business strategist, along with her husband, Tony Melendez, are the proud, I have to say, proud founders of Baseball Training and Hone School Institutes. Now, and that's hone school as in honing your skills, I presume.
So no, it's actually a home school.
Well,
Um,
it's on your LinkedIn, it's typed wrong. That's why I'm asking.
oh, gotcha,
You'll
gotcha.
see it.
I
You'll
didn't
see it. You'll
realize
see it
that.
on LinkedIn. It's spelled wrong. It says hone school. So is that?
Ah.
So I'm thinking, okay, is that because you're honing your skill? Well, let's speak about the skills. So I apologize for that. I should have checked. I had suspicions about it. Sports business strategist. Describe what you are to the viewers right now.
So basically, I'm exactly that. I am a sports business strategist. So I help sports business leaders, entrepreneurs, coaches, organizations, foundations take their skills and build or scale them, grow their businesses, grow their expertise. And it's mostly in the youth capacities. So not that I haven't worked with those that are in major league and those higher higher levels, but mostly the folks I work with are people that are working with the youth. Um, and that's near and dear to my heart because I know that with every coach that I work with, I'm helping to impact young people.
The motivation to do something like this, I understand the motivation. Now the skills. How do you develop the skills to do something like this?
So my husband and I, Tony Melendez, we owned our own baseball and softball training facility for over 13 years. And through that facility, I created over 22 different programs. One of them being a baseball homeschool. And this was 2 years prior to COVID even becoming a thing. I saw a gap with what was happening with our high schoolers. I saw the need for us to create a program where our high schoolers would be able to take what they absolutely loved, which was baseball, and give them an opportunity to make us their school. And so I created the Baseball Homeschool Institute, and they were able to come to us as their educational foundation. And we, although we're not educators, so we weren't the school per se, but I did join forces with an amazing, amazing online school. And so our boys, when COVID hit, they were well prepared and everything continued to flow for them because they were already on the online space.
Yeah, that would have been a challenge under normal circumstances, and that's great that
Mhm.
it kinda it kinda worked to your advantage, I guess, right?
Absolutely. And to their advantage, which was in essence what we created it for. We created it so that we can give them more opportunities, especially with what I was seeing, where we were expecting so much from our boys. Our boys used to come, well, boys and girls. Our athletes used to come in the high school level at least 4 times a week to train. And that was after full days, activities in school, homework, studying, projects to do. And so by creating my homeschool or our homeschool, we gave them the opportunity um, to go to school 100% online, which cut their their educational load by half the time a day. So if they were generally in school 7, 8 hours a day, they were with us in school or in class, I should say, 3 or 4 hours a day, leaving them all the rest of the day to really hone in on their skill, which was baseball, which is what they really wanted to do to make themselves better. It also gave us the opportunity to travel with them anytime we needed to during the year because they were not subjected to having to go to a specific building. they could go to school wherever we were. And so for 10 months, we actually took a group and they lived in Tampa, Florida for 10 months and they
Now,
were able to go to school there.
it's a pretty interesting commitment, on your part and on
Mhm.
their part. Um, are these elite athletes that we're talking about, either are or think they are, or
No, no, not elite in what others would consider them to be elite. They were elite because they were willing to put in the hard work. They were willing, the parents were willing to make the commitment. I would consider that elite. They were willing to put in, the effort and the hard work that it took. So for that purpose, yes, I would say that it was elite. But as far as them being an elite athlete in that sort of, no, they were not considered the best of the best. But after being with us for 10 months, all of them graduated and were picked up by colleges.
now you answered my question. So to what end do they do this? So, because we hear all the time that hard work can beat talent that doesn't work hard. We hear that all the time. So in essence, what I'm hearing from you is you're working from that end as opposed to taking talented players in the old sense, in the
Mhm.
other sense, because now we're talking a different sense. I'm learning about another sense of talent. So we're
Right.
talking about people who desire the skills and have the commitment to go the extra mile. So now what they're literally doing then is investing in an education is what I'm hearing.
In an education and in an experience, because now they're having a full baseball educational experience. Because in addition to them having the opportunity to go to school 100% online, then of course they get fully immersed in the sport. And in addition to that, living away from home for 10 months is a whole different kind of experience, especially these high school boys. And so it's almost like a prep for them for college because they did have, or, they had responsibilities and we made sure that they had responsibilities. And in addition to them having to just, do their studies and their baseball regimens, they had laundry, they had, cleaning day, they had we used to make sure that they knew how to shop for themselves. So we would take them grocery shopping and we would teach them, learn how to shop wisely, how to tie a tie, how to fill out a check. So we looked at this as a full mentoring opportunity. It wasn't just an educational, experience. It was a full blown mentoring opportunity for us as well.
It also, what we've learned with the pandemic, you were talking about the pandemic is, homeschooling because of the pandemic got a bit of a black eye, no?
Hmm.
And how do you react to how your situation worked much better than the people who ended up being homeschooled on an emergency basis, I guess would be the thing, whereas a planned homeschooling experience.
Well, and very different, and I'll tell you what we experienced because of it. So, the first thing was our school, because it had been already doing this for 25 plus years, they were very, very prepared. They didn't have the glitches that everyone experienced when first having to be forced to go to school online. It was a very smooth transition for our kids. They had already been doing it. And so from that standpoint, it was extremely smooth. Our kids knew exactly, how to log into their classes, how to get in contact with their teachers, how to, submit paperwork and get on a Zoom. Zoom became the big thing for everyone. And so our kids were fully immersed in it. And so they felt very comfortable with it. And because of that is where the Sports Business Institute was born. That's how I created the Sports Business Institute, was that I saw a need for other sports organizations that were not prepared for this kind of catastrophe that we were living in. And I said, okay, for those folks, and I understand the pain, how can I lessen that pain for them? How can I teach sports organizations how to take their expertise and turn it into online courses or online training? How to develop marketing skills for this new type of mindset that we're living in. And that's how I created the Sports Business Institute.
So the Sports Business Institute, all right, flesh it out a little more for me. So I understand the motivation because of circumstances the way they were. You saw an opportunity to. So how does it function? If you could expand on it so that we can understand better what the Sports Institute is.
So the Sports Business Institute is a consulting firm. I consult other sports entrepreneurs or sports coaches how to take their skill sets and how to turn it either into a viable business, how to actually create revenue from it, or how to scale it, how to build it, how to make it better, how to take your skills and turn it into different programs. Most coaches that I first start working with, they're either coaches that know how to play basketball, volleyball, whatever their skill set may be, but they don't know how to take it and turn it into an actual business. How do we take that skill and turn it into a business that now creates revenue for you? And also, how do you build on that? So, how do you then hire other coaches so that you can continue to work on the business instead of continuously working in the business? And that was something that Coach Tony and I were very familiar with because after running a facility for 13 years, we understood the pain points and what that felt like to constantly be on a, hamster wheel, running, 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 running. And so that's where I learned a lot of this from the School of Hard Knocks. I sort of had to go through all of the pain and learn what not to do so that we could get to the place where we knew how to do it and do it really, really well. And from a tiny 3,500 square foot facility that we had in the Bronx, New York, I developed over 20 different programs, including travel teams and summer camps and clinics and all kind of amazing programs. And so that's where my expertise now stood out because people, other coaches were coming to me and not just in the baseball and softball world. I now work with volleyball coaches and, basketball coaches and hockey and all kind of different sports backgrounds because I have a model. I have a
Mm,
business model specific to this niche.
yeah, and what are some of the just to share us some of the growing pains, if I can call it that? You call them, mistakes you don't want to repeat. What
Right.
were some of the ones that you help with others avoiding?
Exchanging so much of your time for money. And so that's one of the big things for coaches, especially youth sports coaches. Most of them start out with just doing one on ones where they'll see one player. And so, how many players can you see a day? These kids are usually in school, so you don't first start till 3:30, starting with lessons. And if you're going to go till 8, 9, even 10 o'clock at night, you're still limiting yourself. And so, that's where I created a membership model where then you can do them in groups. And instead of seeing one kid, now you're seeing 10, 15, 20 kids. And that's a scalable model. And then, of course, there's the clinic model where you do specialized clinics throughout the year, summer camps, travel teams. I mean, there was a million other different programs that I throughout the years created to help instead of because I saw that was the mistake we had made, and we had an overhead, and I said, how in the world are we ever going to be able to survive one coach, one player, 6 or 7 players a day? There's no way. The math wasn't adding up. And so then I created this scalable model where we were able to create memberships out of that. It also gave us continuity and recurring revenue every month. And I created that model, and that there were kids that grew up through our facility, and they were there 10 years with us because they literally grew up through this model.
When you talk about a business model, which is totally understandable, what kind of relationships are required to make your business model successful? Do you help as well in kind of pointing as a consultant the kind of people a business should make up? So if the primary business operator,
Mhm.
do you help them also with the kind of people they should bring in, job descriptions, that kind of thing, so that basically you're basically, I guess, creating the new management tree as well?
Absolutely. And it depends on the sport, right? So each sport is going to be very different. I'm going to use baseball because it's what we did. But what we used to do in our facility is we would train our coaches under our banner. And Tony had a coach's curriculum. And so he would literally teach the coaches. If I was bringing in someone for business or for the management side of things, then yet there was some skill sets that I wanted them to have, but there were just some things that were just so unique to our business. So I would train them in our system. And it's exactly now what I do with my coaches or my organizations is I'm teaching them exactly what I taught myself and what I implemented through our business as well.
I guess sports widgets is a thing after all. Huh? It's something you have to do, right? You create a widget and then you replicate it. How
Abs
easy is it I'm sorry. How easy is it to replicate?
it is pretty simple, I have to say. Once you've got a solid model, depending on, again, the type of business it is. So, again, I'll give an example. I'm currently working with a volleyball coach. She is phenomenal. But volleyball is very different from baseball or softball. But when you look at the business model itself, because you're working with athletes, the models are pretty similar. You may not, the way you hire your coaches is probably going to be a little different, and there's going to be certain things that are going to be different. Equipment obviously is a big obvious, that's an obvious one. But there's a lot to this that is very similar. Yeah, I did the same thing with a bike coach. I took this model and I taught her exactly the system to implement, and she grew from seeing 2 or 3 people a day. She's too busy, she's looking to hire coaches now. So the model works, and it's consistent with what I've been able to do with all of my coaches and my consulting clients.
Yeah, well, your business plan is about personal growth, right? So, um, I'll use the word again, replicate. So your job as a business is to help people with personal growth on different multiple levels. You've got the
Absolutely.
players, right? You've got their education, you've got coaches, you've got administration staffs too, I assume that you help in that regard, which is what you're referring to other than so the direct athletic endeavor your husband with all his experience, Tony was able to do. And then when it comes to the administrative side, you would handle that. How complicated is the relationship uh, between the husband and wife and drawing a line somewhere where how does that line
So,
develop?
I love this question because this has to be the biggest question I get when I tell people that we're a family-run business. My son is also involved in our business. Um, It's the biggest question I get. How do you work with your spouse? How do you guys do it? The truth is we never see each other, especially in our facility. Tony was, and he's such an amazing teacher. So once he was out on that floor, he was doing his thing, I was doing mine. The one thing that and he was much better at this than me, I will admit. Tony was much better. He would say, once we're done here and we lock the door, we are now husband and wife, and we go home, and that's our life outside of this location. So he was a lot better at it than me. But the truth is, my office, we knew our roles. And if there was a baseball question, I used to say, you are speaking to the wrong person. You need to go speak to Coach Tony. And if it was anything to do with business or money, Tony would say, that's not my department. You need to go into the office and speak to the people in the office. And so we knew that way that it was really important that we each drew our boundaries and knew what our roles were. And that's why it was very successful. But did the relationship ever spill over? Of course it did. We're very human, and we never hid, that we were husband and wife and that we were a family. But because Tony and I have been together 34 years now, so sometimes it's just the look that you give someone, and you totally have a conversation and don't have to say a word. And so that's been also an advantage for us, is that we know each other so well. And so, but our facility was so special and unique. Our kids, they were just that. They were our kids. And they used to love for Tony and I to interact, because it was like their parents. They felt like they were looking at their parents having a conversation, or some type, if we had a disagreement about something, the kids used to get a chuckle out of that.
I'll ask this question, and I hope you take it the way I intend. We
Ab-
live in a world today where women are challenged, and I just wonder, as a woman, did you feel you needed to prove more because of the business?
Absolutely. So I'll tell you, going into the business, I was very apprehensive, and I thought Tony had lost his mind. I said, when he first presented this notion to me, I said, you're like, you've really lost it. And yes, I was very apprehensive. I came from the I had a dental background. I was running multi-million dollar practices in New York City. And that's why he thought that I was going to be a good fit for this. And I, on the other hand, was saying, oh my gosh, what is he getting us into? This is absolutely crazy. I don't know much about sports. I mean, I've always been a Yankee girl. I love my Yankees. And so I
We'll
was
forgive you.
excited.
We'll forgive you for that.
Yeah, Tony's the Met guy. I'm the Yankee girl. Um, excuse me, I have a little bit of a cold.
It's okay.
Um, and I said, "Oh my, what are we getting into here?" But once I started to see what we were doing with the youth and how we were changing lives and impacting the community, I was completely, completely given into this, whole thing. And I was 100% on board. And then once I saw that, we were creating a real living out of it, I said, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing. We can impact lives while impacting ourselves, leaving a legacy for our family." I was totally in.
If you wanna grab some water, grab some water. I wanna make sure you're okay.
Yeah,
Y y I can talk for about
I'm
20
good.
seconds. You do that and
I'm
get
just gonna
some
grab
water.
a tissue actually. Give me 1 second.
You got it. We're with Jessy Rodriguez Melendez. She's a sports business strategist. She's also joining us on the Spanglish World Network to do a baseball sports business show. It'll be real interesting to watch the program if you're interested. I don't yet have a scheduled date, but we'll forward that to you at some point to let you know when the show will be on.
Okay.
It's a business. Um, as far as baseball is concerned, it's a business of what we're hearing so far. If I can review for the folks that are just joining us now, you train athletes, baseball players. You give them an opportunity to get an education online prior to prior to online education became a big deal in the last 2 years because of the pandemic. And you're all able to free up time for the kids so that they can spend time chasing, if we want to call it, their dream about being baseball players, that kind of thing. So we've talked about the way you've created this template that you can share with other people so that they can have their own business. We've talked about it transcending just baseball, hockey, volleyball, basketball, all those wonderful things. We talked about I think the most important thing is that your relationship with your husband has survived. That's something that you always hope that'll be the case. And that's where we were left off. And you got your water. And, I want to make sure you're okay. Okay. Always nowadays, I didn't ask you to get tested just to have some water.
That'll be
But
the next thing we'll start encountering.
no, no problemo. So being a business practitioner, we're touching a little bit in being a woman, and nowadays women are being accepted more and more in doing things that maybe they haven't, done before. The first woman to, the first woman who, all that stuff.
Right.
And in your case, you're doing something have you found any other women that do what you do, or people at all that do what you do?
So that's a great question, because when I first started out, there weren't many other women for me to reach out to and look for some support. And being a Latina woman, I found added a little bit more, fuel to that fire. But I was determined once I saw that, I had gotten really good at what I was doing, I was determined then to open the door for other women. And so now that I am working with other sports entrepreneurs, that's exactly what I say to them. I encourage them to never allow their gender to be the excuse. There should not be an excuse. If you're making a difference in the world and you're impacting, especially young people with your talent, then that should be, that speaks for itself. And the youth that you impact and what you create for them in their lives, um, you know, I mean, that's it. That's what this is really all about. And it's really why I continue to do what I do is because at the end of the day, again, with every coach that I work with, I know that I can't reach every kid. We reached through our facility, we reached a couple of thousand, I would say, and we helped over 100 of them get scholarships go to college with scholarships. But now working with other coaches and in other sports, I'm like, my gosh, with every coach that I work with, if they have 2 or 300 kids that they're touching, then that's now hundreds of thousands of kids that I indirectly get to impact. And so that's my motivating factor every single day. And just to know too that with every coach that I'm helping, especially if they're women, that if they see that I was able to do it, then they absolutely can do it. And that also gives them encouragement.
The good news is one thing, the bad news is the other. Your good news is it is. I think I don't know what the situation is in the Bronx in New York as far as education and sports athletics in the younger children before they, early high school, before high school, where schools budget wise have
Mhm.
really dropped. Post school activities. Do you feel that you're filling a void that is being created through time because of economics and, school boards? I'm not suggesting that they're turning their back on sports, but they have to make serious choices.
Well, yeah, I mean, and we're no longer, let me be clear, we're no longer in the facility in the Bronx. Our landlord sold that building almost 3 years ago. So we were so lucky that we had already gone online prior to all of that. But I do still stay obviously very connected in what's going on with sports in the Bronx and in school and especially the high school level. And it is, yes, it's very, very concerning because there are so many different programs and now are no longer exist. And so that's why programs like the Baseball Homeschool Institute became so vitally important, especially for the high school age player that is truly inner city that doesn't have an outlet and is looking for an opportunity or a better opportunity to showcase what they have. I mean, we've got some incredible talent that come out of the city, the boroughs of New York. Incredible talent. And just like every other kid, I would want our kids to be able to, showcase those talents. And so programs like the Baseball Homeschool Institute provide them that platform, and especially because they're not limited by having to go to a school building. They can attend a tournament in Puerto Rico for 3 weeks because they get to take school with them. And those that was intentionally one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to create a program like that really gave the athlete the opportunity. And now that we're doing it not just with baseball, we're now expanding it into softball. And eventually, I want this volleyball coach that I'm working with wants to establish the Volleyball Homeschool Institute, where she'll be able to take the same concept and now do it with volleyball players as well.
Isn't one of the greatest things that a parent or a guardian can share with a child, even if they don't realize it, is challenges? And isn't that what this is about? About offering opportunity for challenge children
Absolutely.
Children need challenges. And by children, I mean people like me too, but, you never grow up, right? Challenges make people better.
Yeah, and because of COVID, I'm gonna say that for me, there's never been a more important time than what we're living right now, because so many of these athletes lost a huge chunk of their lives, not just through because of with sports, but just in general, social activities and educationally, obviously. They lost a chunk of their lives they'll never be able to regain. And so, being given an opportunity that allows them to spread their wings some now, where it's not just back to school, and back to things as normal, although nothing is normal anymore, but it's not just back to normal. It's let's explore a little bit now what other opportunities there might be, so that if something ever happened again, one, we will feel more prepared, and two, we'll have some options. Athletes weren't left with a lot of options during COVID.
No, and children weren't,
The
and
children, for sure.
teenagers weren't, right? And I think to your point, um, you know, a school is brick and mortar where
Mhm.
children go and meet other children and have face-to-face conversations and relationships, right?
Right.
And that's, the growth of children, and as I said earlier about challenges and motivation, right? They challenge each other. Is there any kind of connection? Well, you said they go to Puerto Rico. Speak to the opportunities that these kids of like mind, of like experience, how they benefit from homeschooling and your institutes.
Well, one of the things that, and this is all in the works and things we're speaking of doing, but one of the things that I really want to do is we want to expand. We had started some work in the Bahamas prior to COVID. We had brought one of our camps down to Bahamas, incredible talent in the Bahamas. And we actually started a homeschool unit in the Bahamas. So we had a couple of kids that were involved there. My vision with this has always been to have, multiple locations, and at some point bring all of those players together in a tournament somewhere, locally, maybe Florida, or, somewhere where they can all come and get to know one another face to face and actually compete against one another. Friendly competition, and also give them opportunities where they can be showcased. So if they're of a certain age, we can showcase them and now give them educational opportunities, to explore what's available to them that way as well.
We haven't talked about um, the specifics on how you help with them getting into colleges. One of the things I know about sports is one of the biggest things that athletes need is they need video. They need proof of what they do,
Mhm.
examples of what they do. So recruiters can look at a picture or a series of pictures, and I'm referring, of course, to video and live game recordings to show prospective recruiters what this athlete might be able to do in their own minds.
Yeah, so I've always loved video, and I believe in the power of video. And so, way before this had even become a concept, what we used to do in our facility was we would showcase our kids through these Zoom opportunities. So, we would have college coaches Zoom in, and we would actually showcase our players at the facility. The other way was to actually involve them through our travel teams and bring them to different states throughout the US through these tournament experiences. And they would showcase their talents that way. And that's how we got a lot of our kids college scholarships. We would bring them to Texas, we would bring them to Florida, all over the Northeast, California. Um, and so our kids got to play in these different tournaments and got to showcase their talents. And it was always interesting because, being the coming from the Northeast, they people used to say, "Oh, they're not going to have that much of an advantage. They only get to play a certain number of months out of the year." But what a lot of people didn't realize is these kids were training 6 and 7 days a week because we had an indoor facility. And so, our kids really shined. It was amazing to watch, and exciting for us to see that, these kids that come from inner city were going to these different states and, causing all this buzz and being given college opportunities.
With inner city comes the, someone like me who's not from New York, and I, we all have our prejudices, right, or our
Mhm.
assumptions, right? So
Yep.
when you say inner city, how do these children afford to be able to be a part of what you're doing?
Great question. So I the parent support. Parent support was amazing. We used to do a lot of fundraising. We used to do all different types of events. We would raise, a lot of the funds for them to travel. And I'll say this, because we were in a city, we made it a point. Our kids, we used to tell them when we travel, it was always shirt and tie on the plane. They had to be well dressed, pants where they belonged. Their hair had to be, well kept. So we were very, very strict. The kids in our facility were not allowed to curse. We did not allow, foul language. They had to show utmost respect to officials, to their parents, and to themselves. And that was what made us stand out. We would travel with our players, and it was, I mean, we have all these beautiful memories and all these beautiful pictures to show and video, of how well we were received wherever we went because our kids knew that that was the stipulation to play for us.
It's I know it sounds archaic, it sounds even elitist almost to suggest that, people who if you convince children to wear suits and dress uniformly, not in a
Mhm.
bad way, but in a
Right.
good way, where they essentially dress as a team, right? Isn't that part of the
Right.
reason why you believe in that? And
Absolutely.
their attitude is to speak as a team that no one should, do anything to hurt the group. And
Right.
so, team concept is very important in sports. How else do you instill that kind of mentality? Because it's very important. We talked about hard work, we
Mhm.
talked about opportunity, we talked about challenge, and now demeanor. In what other ways do you train demeanor to make sure players understand there's more? There are other facets of your game that you need to work on.
Well, for one thing, Tony always taught our players, you be the first one on the field, you be the last one to leave. You make sure that when we're done, the area is kept and clean. You make sure that you go and you shake the other coach's hand, look them in the eye, be respectful as well as the other team, members, your opponents. You make sure that it was, the way we looked at this is we were truly mentors. We were mentoring from the moment they walked in the door. So it wasn't just while they were training, it wasn't just while they were playing. These were young men and women we were forming, and we knew that. And that started from the top. That started from us. The way we spoke, the way we carried ourselves, the way Tony, went to a game, the way Tony spoke to his coaching staff, the way he spoke to the, officials and the opposing team and the coaches. And so there was always the first example was we were leading by example. That was the example. And so follow the leader is the way we looked at it. And the way we led is the way many of our kids now are coaches, and we're so proud of it. And they now have carried that legacy on. What we instilled in them, they're now doing with these next generations. And so, that for me is again what this is all about. Because every time we see one of our kids now, they still approach Tony with the same respect. Or we'll have kids that have gone married and call us and say, I want you to meet my wife. I want you to meet my kids. It's because of that. it's truly, baseball obviously was what brought us together, but it was all of the lessons that they learned beyond that is what's kept us together.
I like the story myself because I can imagine that you travel as a group and you show up somewhere and people say, "Oh, here come the inner city kids from New York,"
That's
and they're
right.
not anything like people expect. Am I saying something terrible?
No, you're absolutely correct. And that was, we knew that. And so for us, I mean, we had pilots. I remember on one flight, the pilot came on and said, I would like to acknowledge the TM elite baseball players from the Bronx, New York, that are on board with us. And the whole plane erupted. And everyone then, after, as we're getting off the plane, they're like, my gosh, who would have known? They're all so well mannered. They're so respectful. They look so wonderful. I mean, it was just a delight. We walked around like proud parents all the time because we knew they were talking about our kids. So, it was an amazing experience for us because of that as well.
Not that I don't care about the parents and the sisters and the brothers, but I could just see the grandmothers going, "That's what I'm talking about."
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, I admire what you're doing and um, building, you know, building a person's game, right? It takes more than just building their game. You're building the person, and what we've
Absolutely.
learned in this interview so far is that, and we don't have much time left, but what we've learned thus far is that building an athlete is a great opportunity to build a great human being. Es-
Absolutely.
Because of the, if you want to speak to the lessons that sports teaches, we've heard a couple of what the organization teaches, but what does the sport teach? What are we missing so far that we've heard a lot of great things. What have I left out so far? The benefit of doing sports.
Well, it's scientifically proven that any kid that plays a sport does better educationally. So that for sure is, I always point that out to parents. That's number one. Number two, it teaches them discipline, right? If you want to be an athlete, you have to be disciplined. Number three, I believe, not that I know because I'm also a brain trainer. It does amazing things for an athlete, or any let's say just a child that plays a sport, because then, if they eat well, drink tons of water, get their rest, it does good for their bodies. The exercise, the being outside in sunlight. I mean, these are all wonderful factors as a human being. We need these things, the interaction with other players, the competition, all wonderful things for children. And so I always encourage parents, get your children involved, especially in their community sports. Let them get out, let them meet the other kids in the community. You become a part of the community that way. You get to experience the people that you live amongst. And so overall, it's a wonderful experience for everyone. And
Yes.
it gives you a reason to get out and away from being behind screens or in front
You,
of a screen.
yeah, the sad truth is that self-respect doesn't develop in a vacuum.
That's
You
right.
know, it has to be done in the open and there has to be given an opportunity. And I'm sure and I joked about grandmothers and parents, brothers and sisters and family must be proud of their children that you're teaching and you know at the end of the day every community needs positive examples and it sounds like you're creating a wonderful positive example and that seems to be your goal and it started well with in my mind when you were talking about preparing them for college you know these children are not just athletes a lot of times coaches I hear this all the time because we do lots of sports stuff and talk to a lot of coaches, a lot of owners of organizations, teams, and
Right.
they talk about picking players with character.
Mm.
How important is character development, and what are some of the challenges to ensure that you can build that character? We've heard some of the reasons. Have I left any of that out so far?
So, yes, I do say yes. It's very important for character. But in our case, we had to be those character builders. some of these kids were coming from single family homes, single mother homes, and you know, they were coming from challenging environments and didn't truly understand themselves even. And so we were helping to form that character. So sometimes it also depends on the athlete, and that's why, as a coach or a mentor in sports, we need to also prepare ourselves, get ourselves prepared, not just in the sport, but social, you know, so the social environment that we're going to deal with, how to deal with parents, how to talk to a single mom who perhaps is, raising us, a boy alone. I mean, there's so many factors that go into this. But sometimes you do become that character builder. And sometimes you have to go through the hard times with them, and you have to show them that you care. If it means you going to a school to talk to a teacher or a principal on their behalf, then that's what you need to do. And that's what we did.
Yeah, I think I'll ask this question. So here you are doing all this stuff, and we're talking about the development of children and stuff like that. How has it helped you and your husband develop as people?
And I'm going to be so transparent here. Towards the end of us owning the facility, this is where it started to get tough for us. And I'm going to speak to this, and I hope that if there are parents out there, I hope they take this word to heart. The toughest thing that we notice and we continue to notice is that for parents that don't understand sports sometimes and don't understand what happens, with coaches, especially in the environment we're living in right now, everyone wants their child to shine, and we get that. We understand that. But if you're going to entrust your child to a coach or an organization, then you need to allow and pay for it, because a lot of parents are paying a lot of money right now for their kids to be taught, or to be involved in sports. Let them do their jobs. Allow them to do what they're there to do. Too many parents, Tony calls them parent agents. They wanna walk in, and at 10 years old, they think that their child should be considered for, some college already, and we're telling them, let each child live out their experience appropriate to their age. There's gonna be so much time for this child to be under this type of pressure. No 10-year-old should be, feeling that type of pressure. Let them play, let them have a, good time. That should be fun. And even when they're in high school, there's got to be some part to this that's fun for them, that gives them the motivation to continue to do it. Because if it becomes another job or another duty, then they start to feel like, why am I doing this? And we saw so many talented kids quit because they felt just way too much pressure. And so my word of encouragement to parents out there is, let let if you're going to trust your child to an organization or a coach or, some team, let the coaches do their jobs, and you go and do your job, and that's go and be a great fan and support system to that organization.
And I want to underline what you said. Consider, I guess, what I'll say is, consider it a handoff. A parent's job is to find and decide and learn and investigate where the best place in their mind is to entrust their child. And
Right.
once that happens, just like a relay, you have to hand the baton and let
Absolutely.
them run that part of the race. Is the way I'll describe it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we didn't get a chance. We only have a few minutes left. We didn't talk about your brain training part. So we can treat it like a teaser. If we had another hour to talk about your brain training, help us understand in a couple of minutes what that means.
And so I'm a certified brain trainer, which means that I teach, about the brain and the different parts of the brain and how it works. And on top of that, I'm also a certified neuroencoding specialist. So I teach people how to optimize their brain, how to take the science that's behind a lot of the thoughts that we have and why we have certain thoughts, and then causes a feeling, and that feeling causes an emotion, and that emotion causes something to happen. And so I teach others how to optimize their brains so that then they can have better mindsets.
It's definitely a major challenge to be sure.
Mm.
So tell me a little bit about your husband, Tony. We really haven't talked about him. So um, he never made it to the major leagues.
He did not. Tony played semi-professionally in Puerto Rico, but Tony's real love, believe it or not, is in martial arts. Also a martial arts. He's ninth or 10th degree. He teaches boxing. He teaches kickboxing. He's a teacher at heart, and he's got this really incredible special gift for the youth. He's got this magnetizing way of being around young people, and they just absolutely love him. And he was definitely the reason why our facility was so successful, because he has this innate ability to connect with the youth. He considers it his gift, and it truly is a gift.
I just wanted to make sure we talked about him a little bit since he is a partner. I guess in conclusion, in the last couple of minutes, let's look into, if we can, a crystal ball. We understand where you are today in regards to the institutes. What are you looking forward to in the next few years? Where do you see yourself in the organizations in a couple?
Well, for starters, I let me plug. We're going to be starting all bases covered next Wednesday at 4 p.m. right here with all of you, and so I'm super excited to be coming on board and bringing all bases covered to this new platform. But my vision for our organization in the next 4 or 5 years is to just continue to duplicate what I do and instill in other coaches, have them grow, and continue to really touch the youth in this really special and unique way. And sports is such a beautiful way to do that. It's a great way for us to touch our young people.
And specifically, what can we look forward to here on Spanglish Sports World? As far as Wednesdays at 4 p.m., what can we expect to see on a weekly basis?
Well, we could definitely expect for me to be bringing a lot of these topics to the platform, and we'll talk, and have guests. I want to have, I've had so many special guests before. So I'd love to even, have some parents come on. We'll have some athletes come on and talk with us, and maybe even some special guests, some special athlete, professional athletes, and that sort of thing.
If if you were to give someone advice, the short, short, you can take a minute or two. How does someone know that they're ready to do something like this and be willing to start something like this? What do you see as what they need to know they're in for and what their strengths should be?
Well, let me start out by saying what you shouldn't do. So, if you're not fully prepared, that meaning you haven't really played the sport at a high level, have never dealt with, doing some type of sports related or organized sports, get yourself involved by starting to volunteer your time, go work in the community with some of the rec organizations that may be around you, get your feet wet, understand the ins and outs of dealing with parents on that level, start learn your communication skills with the athletes, get yourself really prepared that way. Once you really are prepared, or feel, you'll never be 100% prepared, let me just say that. But once you feel more prepared, then reach out to someone like me, or maybe it's someone else, and have them walk you through the steps, so you don't have to make all the costly mistakes that I did, because I had to learn it the hard way.
Well, Jessy Rodriguez Melendez, thank you for taking the time to speak to us to here on Open Forum.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure.
For Jessy Rodriguez Melendez, I'm Candid Frank Stanishi. Thank you for watching Candid Frank Live's Open Forum, seen live Fridays at 4 p.m. Eastern. time. Don't forget her show Wednesdays at 4 p.m. Eastern time. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For Open Forum, other news and entertainment and sports programming we offer, please check out spanglishworld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next time.